Well, I was a student at Norwood High School in what's now called Year 11 when war broke out, and I thought, good, I won't be in this. I thought the war will be over pretty quickly. I was 16, and anyway, as time went by, the war got worse, and I joined up because I thought I had to, not because I really wanted to, because I thought I had to. And I don't know why I chose the Air Force, because I was an apprentice electrician. I could have probably gone into one of the maintenance units in the army, but anyway, I chose the Air Force. And of course, like every young bloke, I wanted to be a pilot, which I wasn't. So I started training here in Victor Harbor, and then went to Ballarat and trained as a wireless operator, air gunner. Yeah. And I went to Mount Gambier as an instructor for a while. I was on Air Observer School, and then went to England and eventually arrived in Bomber Command. My dad was too young for the First World War, but he joined up in the Second World War, so both he and I were in the services together. And he was in the army in the 2nd 27th, and he fought in Africa, in Egypt and Syria. Yeah, I wrote letters. He came home and he got injured in Syria and got discharged. And so he was out not long after I went in. Well, it was a big adventure, thinking, well, I'm going to go, first of all, I'm going to Victoria and I'll see Melbourne, and then Sydney, and then Los Angeles, not Los Angeles, San Francisco and New York, and then across the Atlantic on the Queen Mary to Greenock in Scotland, and then right down the bottom of England to Brighton, where the reception centre was for aircrew. I forget how long we were there, a couple of months, I suppose. Then we were sent to wireless training schools and other training units, and eventually I got sent to a squadron. We were told one day, look, all the aircrew will gather in a room at a place called Wing in Buckinghamshire, I think it was. Or, I'm not sure, I think Buckinghamshire or Bedfordshire. All aircrew will assemble here. When we got there, they said, all right, crew up. You want two gunners, a wireless operator, a navigator, a bomber, and a pilot. So the first thing to do was find a pilot. And I was the last one to find a pilot. And I chose this elderly bloke. Most of the other fellas had chosen young, daring blokes. I was looking for a nice, steady guy. And I chose a bloke called Jim Robson from Perth. He was then a flying officer, and I'd done about nearly 400 hours flying by then, and I thought I was pretty experienced. And I said to him, "You're the last bloke, so I've got you as a pilot." I said, "But I'm fairly experienced. I've got nearly 400 hours." He said, "I've got 7,000 hours." He'd been in England quite a while before me, and he'd been an instructor training pilots on Tiger Moths. And so he was a very experienced pilot and a very good pilot too. So he chose me and accepted me really. And then he said, well, I've got a navigator, and that was a lad from Kent. And he was a wonderful navigator, he's probably the best on our squadron. And then he already had two gunners. One bloke had been a yeoman of signals in the Navy. Another lad was a Londoner. And one came from Derby, and so we finished up with a crew of 7, and then we started flying together. And on our first flight, I think at Wing, we burst a tyre approaching, and that was a bit of an adventure, holding the plane still. And we went from there to flying on Stirlings and later Lancasters. When I look back, I think the Lancaster was probably the best aircraft, or one of the best aircraft that was ever built. It's a wonderful plane. We were in Nissen huts. They were cold. They had a little stove in the centre, and we had access to coke in a shed nearby. And it was the duty of if anyone woke up during the night to stoke up the stove. We used to get it nearly red hot. The stove to keep us warm. It was so damn cold, but we had a comfortable bed, and we had sheets and pillow slips. Whereas when I was training in Australia, we had was a blanket and a pillow without a pillow with no pillow slip on it. So it was pretty good, really. The lady in the village used to do our laundry for us. Cost us a couple of bob for shirts and things like that. But and we'd go to the local pubs and things like that. Ely was the nearest town. I was at Whitchford, which was a 15-minute bike ride out of Ely, and we'd cycle into town and sometimes have a different meal to what we were getting at Scotland and have a few beers at the local pub and cycle back. Lovely town. I had a rabbit's foot. Someone gave me a rabbit's foot when I enlisted, and I put it in the bottom of my kit bag, and it was there at the end of the war, and all the fur wore off the bottom of it, but it saved me. The pilot used to wear a white scarf, and he used to write the name of the town we'd bombed on the scarf, and I suppose his daughter's got it now because he's dead and his wife's dead, but he had this scarf, and all our ops were written on this scarf, and I used to sing to the crew after we bombed the target on every op. I used to sing one of Bing Crosby's songs, The Funny Old Hills, and they all enjoyed that, or seemed to, because I controlled the wireless, you see, being the wireless operator. But apart from that, no, but nothing unusual that I'm aware of. I don't know what the others had, I didn't ask them. I used to receive messages mainly, and they were wins and instructions from any instructions they wanted to give us. Usually you couldn't send messages because you had to maintain wireless silence because the enemy could track you down. If you sent a message, the radar would pick up where you were, and so we kept radio silence. But I'd every 15 minutes, I think it was, not sure now, it was 15 minutes, half hour, I'd get a message for the navigator with the wind speeds and various other weather information. You always had a debriefing, you had to report to the intelligent people, but the best thing was that you got a cup of coffee with rum in it, a cup of tea with rum, and you'd have a cigarette. We're all encouraged to smoke. When you got your pay, you got free cigarettes sometimes and a razor blade. I think it was to shave with, not cut your throat. I was a wireless operator, I rarely wore anything because I controlled the heating, and when I got everyone else warm enough, I'd be sweating. Stay alert. No trouble at all, believe me. You never made a mistake, and you were as sharp as you've ever been in your life because your life was on the line, and those of the crew too. So no worry about going to sleep or dozing off or not doing your job. Ludwigshafen, I think, was the hairiest because we did a lot of daylight flying as well, and usually we could bomb through cloud, but there was no cloud at Ludwigshafen, and we all got blasted. The anti-aircraft fire was extremely heavy, and that would have been the hairiest. Well, after every 6 ops, we got a few days leave. I've forgotten how much it is, so 3 or 4 days perhaps, and we generally would head to London, or it must be more than that because I went to Edinburgh a couple of times, and you'd get a free train past London or wherever you wanted to go, and we always asked for the longest destination we could, and then we could drop off anywhere along the track. Most people went there. That was in Australia House, in the basement of Australia House in the Strand. And they had a visitor's book. You could sign the visitor's book, and you could make any comments if you liked, and you could, I think we get cups of tea and things like that, and you could catch up with the Australian newspapers. It's a huge room. I remember I was there one day with a buzz bomb went overhead. That's one of these flying bombs, and then the engine cut out. It sounded like right over the Boomerang Club, and I dived under the table next to a wing commander. I thought, how great. But it went off in the Strand somewhere. I was in London. I was on leave. we'd finished our ops and we went on leave prior to being posted back to Brighton to come home. And I saw Eisenhower receive the Freedom of the City of London, driving down the Strand in an open car, and it was great. I got in the crowd at Buckingham Palace. If you have a look at the picture closely, you might be able to find me. I forget where I was staying. The Australians had a Comforts Fund hospital in Sloane Square in London, which was very good. And we're going to stay there fairly cheap, and catch the tube back to usually around Fleet Street, where there was a pub called Codger's, just off Fleet Street, where most of the Australians gathered. And we used to go to a pub called the King and Keys opposite, so we probably headed there after VE Day. Only be the pilot and I, because the rest of the crew were all bombs and they'd gone home. They were celebrating with their families, but we were just waiting to come home. Well, the first bloke to wait for me was the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Mr. Fraser, because we called into, Wellington? Yeah, I think it was Wellington. Yeah, called into Wellington, and he was nearly blind apparently. He came up and shook my hand and said, "Welcome home." And I still wasn't home, I was in New Zealand. And then in Sydney, I can't remember, we went into Circular Quay and we were picked up and taken, I think we went straight to a train. Yeah, it wasn't all in one day. Not sure, I think we were put up overnight in Melbourne. It's hard to remember, but I remember at Ballarat, the train stopped at Ballarat, and people I'd stayed with at Ballarat while I was training were on the platform to meet me and gave me a parcel of fruit actually, to take home to my family. I was at school when the war broke out, 39, and September 39, and some of my schoolmates, their fathers had been in World War II and they'd served in France, and one had been gassed very badly, and he couldn't sleep in a bed. He used to sleep he couldn't breathe properly because of the gassing he'd received in France, and he used to have to sleep in a lounge chair at night. And I'd seen him and he was a nice guy, but he suffered a lot. And then another one, his father was an alcoholic because he'd been shelled quite a lot when he was serving in France. And then I thought, God, I don't want to be in this. Someone will stick a bayonet in me. I'm only a little bloke. And so I thought, I'll be glad that I'm only 16, it'll be all over before I'm old enough to go when I'm 18. But when you get to, as things got worse, and the Japs started to come down, you just felt that you had to go to war. And, I didn't give a thought to joining any other service but the Air Force. I really don't know why, it's hard to say. But that's one of the reasons I didn't want to go. And I hope we never have any more wars. And I'm glad our people are coming back from Afghanistan, because there's been 40 odd killed there. In World War II there were 55,000 Bomber Command people killed. So, it's a dreadful waste of young life. One of my mates got killed in a raid on Cologne on Christmas Day. And he was a very intelligent bloke. He had a lot to offer the country with his brains and that sort of thing, but, just lost. Waste of a good life. For what? All right, that's enough.